Okay, so we're going to be talking about eating disorders. So, eating disorders, what are they apart from the fear of food and gaining weight? Those are actually just a small part of these deadly and life consuming mental disorders. And I really want to emphasize on the mental part because these are things that really are connected with body image and looking thin, but it's more of a mental thing than it is a body. So, the statistics. So, as you can see, all adult women, men, and teenagers are affected by all types of eating disorders, but these are the three main ones that we're going to be looking into. And also, like with age, all races can be affected by eating disorders, not just one type of race. So, like Asian, um, Americans, or Mexicans, anyone can be affected. And even though you hear about anorexia and bulimia the most, binge eating is actually the most common because it's just actually the easiest to develop, and it's actually most common in adult women than it is in anyone else. So the first one we're going to be looking into is anorexia. Anorexia is the one that most people hear about when they hear eating disorder, and this is the one with the food restriction, the overexercising, the obsessing over food, body, and weight. The side effects of anorexia are pretty deadly. This is actually the most deadliest one out of all of the eating disorders. You can have, from the starvation, you can have a weak heart, loss of menstrual cycle, lanugo, which is extra hair on your arms from your body trying to keep you warm, organs failing, your nails become frail, depression, anxiety, and exhaustion from the lack of nutrition your brain has, the slowing of the metabolism, and eventually death. The next one is bulimia. So this is the one that people connect with vomiting. Usually, if you hear about bulimia, you think about someone trying to make their food come back up. So this one is largely about eating. You starve yourself, but then you eat. And unlike anorexia, anorexics try to use laxatives as their way of purging along with exercise, but bulimics use laxatives, exercise, and vomiting, but their most common one is vomiting. So, like anorexia, the side effects of bulimia are weak heart, loss of menstrual cycle, lanugo, organs failing, slowing of the metabolism, and the big ones are tooth decay and gum disease from the acid from the vomit. Throat and esophagus become eroded, and stomach ulcers from all of the constant throwing up. So, binge eating is the most common, and it's actually the most common because of how easy it is to develop. So, the cycle of binge eating is really like, so say, like, we're all busy, and especially in college, we're going to become even more busy, but sometimes we forget to eat, and so usually that starts the cycle. So, you forget to eat, and then you're so hungry because you forgot to eat all these hours, and then you become obsessed with food. So you want to eat everything in sight. You want to eat everything in your pantry, your fridge, your cabinet, everything. And then you become ashamed because you ate that much, and so you feel guilty. And then you start the cycle of restricting and not eating again. So what goes on in the mind? Who is Ed? So Ed is actually a short version of eating disorder, but most people actually consider it as a person that's living inside your brain. So Ed actually is someone who teaches you, yells at you, and encourages you to starve yourself. Um, a lot of an eating disorder is trying to get rid of Ed and who you are without him. He is like he's like an abusive parent, always telling you that you ate too much, you didn't exercise enough, or you're just fat. So thinspo is basically eating disorder version of inspiration, inspo. So there are many things that thinspo comes from, but really where this originated from is a website called ProAna, which is basically an eating disorder website, and it just encourages. It's like a group, a community group to help each other starve and to engage in eating disorder activities. And these are some thoughts that someone may have with an eating disorder, and just like encouraging things to say when you don't want to eat. And this is something I found, and you can put your weight on it, or encouraging little notes to not eat, or you can put thoughts in your head from Ed that say like you're just the fattest person ever. So how does society see eating disorders? So this is a comment I found from an Instagram reel a couple weeks ago, and it was just this girl talking about her eating disorder journey and her recovery. And someone commented, "Just eat more, LOL." And it's really not that simple. I mean, some people might look at someone and be like, "Oh yeah, just eat more. It's really like that's all you need to do to fix it." But like I said, Ed is just someone who's telling you not to eat, and he's someone almost that you worship because you feel like you can't eat, you don't deserve to eat. And this is just an example of how people just don't understand that. And then here are some comments that people say to people and about people with eating disorders. Like people choose to live this way. Um, Eating disorders are not a choice; they are actually genetic, and if you get one, it's not really your fault. Um, Although peer influences can help, like make one happen, and they're not just a phase; it's a disease, and um, a phase, it would be better to describe even disordered eating, which is basically where you see like like we have prom coming up, so some girls are like, oh, gotta fit in my prom dress, gotta go on a diet. That's more of disordered eating. It's just a small amount of time, but eating disorders they last for a lot longer. And then these are some other comments that people say to try to encourage you to get better, and relate, but really they're just damaging. So eating disorders are very treatable, and you're very much able to recover from one. So these are the 5 levels of eating disorder treatment. So the first level is the least intense level. This is outpatient care. This is where you see a therapist or a dietitian or a psychiatrist every now and then, or like once a week. And this is where you're stable enough to live your daily life, go to school, go to work, but you still need help and care. Level 2 is IOP, Intensive Outpatient Care or Program. This is where you have your scheduled therapy sessions as well as meal support and nutritional counseling. You can do this online or in person at a facility. It's usually for like 3 to 5 hours in the day. Not really that bad, but it's still like more than just your typical therapy. Level 3 is PHP. This is Partial Hospital Program. This is where you still live and sleep at home, but you go to a facility for like 6 to 8 hours a day for 5 to 6 weeks, or 5 hours a day for 5 to 6 days a week. And this is also where you have your monitored meals, therapy, and vital checkups. So it's a lot more intense than just IOP, but it's not as intense as residential or hospital. So level 4 is your hospital, or no, level 4 is your residential. This is similar to PHP, but you actually are staying at the facility now. So you're sleeping and living and engaging in group therapy, individual therapy, monitored meals, vital checkups, the whole thing. And then level five is hospitalization. This is where you're at your sickest, where you're basically your do or die. Um, this here you don't really have your therapy sessions or your like group therapy or anything, but you do. This is where you have your monitored meals, and you really aren't allowed to do anything without someone standing there. And you're usually getting food tubed at this point. You're being fed through a tube because you're just that sick. And this is actually where you don't stay that long since it's the hospital. They usually try to get you stable enough to get to residential. So why is this important to me? So um, so I was diagnosed with anorexia in the ninth grade, and but these are all pictures from my sophomore year, so 21 through 22. And in all of these pictures, I'm smiling, but these were actually all where I'm at my lowest. This is at cheer camp, just at Christmas time, and then that's when we went shopping for initiation food and stuff for cheer. So in these pictures, I'm either running off of 50 or 500 calories for the day, and I was scared to eat anything without gaining weight. So, and also, a lot of people don't know about this. I don't tell anyone. Um, but you can't, this just shows that you can't look at someone and be like, yeah, she has an eating disorder. Eating disorders are not really, you can look at someone and see that they're emaciated, but a lot of the time, you're not going to see it. It's very much a mental disorder. So, what can we do about it? So, something that I've learned is that we really should talk about them because mental they're mental illnesses. They need to be brought awareness to, and they're very serious and fatal. I've never known anyone to like personally to die from an eating disorder, but I've had family friends um, be hospitalized for it, and they can affect anyone. Like I said, any gender, any race, any age. And like I also said, you can't tell if someone has an eating disorder by looking at them. It's just, I mean, you can sometimes, but a lot of the time you can't. And then it is very much possible to recover from an eating disorder, like the 5 ways of treatment. And these are some of the things that you can say to someone, even if they don't have an eating disorder. Just you never know if someone's battling someone. And something I've learned as well while researching is the fact that I think Matthew 6 said that no matter what we wear or what we drink or what we eat, God has it all planned out for us, and He made us in His own image. So even though we might not like what we see, God sees us as perfect. And that's my thing. My thing.
Alright, I want to open it up to our guests first. If you have any feedback or questions for Hope.
I'm just proud of you for speaking on a topic that is so personal to you and the courage to get up in front of your peers and bring awareness to this. So a question is, at what stage in any type of eating disorder is there like a self-awareness of, oh, I have an eating disorder?
Um, Honestly, I'm not sure. For me, I had to be diagnosed, but I thought it was just typical teenage um, obsession with food because society really glorifies going on a diet and trying to be your best self and looking thin. So for the longest time, I thought I was just, going on a diet, but over time, um, I was diagnosed with one, and it was really a shock when I was diagnosed. So I think unless someone really says like, "Oh, maybe you have an eating disorder," you don't really realize it.
a little girl to a beautiful, beautiful young woman. But I understand that same idea of the prom dress. I'm looking for mother of the groom and mother of the bride dresses, and I've probably said to you guys things like, I gotta fit into that dress. There's a societal pressure, but bringing it down more to SES, what are your thoughts about the pressure within our school and what we as women teachers with women and male teachers with the young men can do about these kinds of things?
Um, well, I will say, like, just having teachers that you feel comfortable talking to. Like, Miss Panagakis was actually the only teacher I ever told about it. And even with Miss Cook and you, like, I've always felt really comfortable talking to y'all about things, and that's been a really big help. Um, through my high school career, people weren't always the nicest about it. So just having teachers that I knew were there to support about it was really helpful. So just having a support system.
Do you think that, um, and this, I'm just kind of thinking out loud, I wonder if when we do things like small groups, if we did something that was, if we said, these are going to be kind of topics that we are going to cover in our small groups, do you think that would draw people together, or do you think that might push people away?
Um, I think that most people don't like to talk about eating disorders. I think they, yeah, in a group. I mean, it's something that you really should talk about just with the people you really trust most. Um, like I said, I haven't really told anyone about it. Um, People are very judgmental, and so I think if someone told me that, like, yeah, we're going to talk about this today, I would be freaked out and I wouldn't have said anything.
This is the last question. Sorry. I love my questions and answers, but I can, um, we women who have a Hispanic background, we do have a different body type
Mm-hmm.
than your typical young American girl with European descent. Um, do you think that some of the things we did to highlight like the Hispanic awareness and to highlight Black History Month and to highlight other beauties in other cultures, do you think those kinds of things are making inroads in even in some of these mental and emotional personal issues?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think like as someone who's like not American, one thing I've really had to come to grips with, especially coming to Southside, is that you're not American. You're not like you have to fight your genetics about it. So I think bringing awareness to the diversity of it is very helpful. It really opens people's eyes.
I was gonna ask a little bit, because it's super interesting, um, that the numbers that you had at the beginning weren't, um, one, they weren't what I would have guessed.
Mm-hmm.
Having heard presentations like this before, knowing a little bit about it, I don't know that I would have filled in the numbers just guessing what that was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Especially when the numbers are more with adult women than they were. Like one of the mistakes I think I would have made was I would have guessed this would have been a bigger problem for teenagers than it would be for adults.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, I think I would have guessed there would have been more of a disparity with women, and it does seem to be a bigger issue with women for all the cultural things we talked about, right? Cultural expectations, things like that. But also, like, I don't know that I would have guessed that men would have been as close
Mm-hmm.
in that, right?
Yeah.
So it's super interesting to me. Like, this is not a problem that's isolated to one group of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciate that you're bringing that up. But also, I like that you wanted to emphasize that this is a mental health and it seems like so much. I promise you, I'm getting to a question. And it seems like so much of it is like the statements that you made, the way social media people comment on social media about stuff. Um, all of that tends to generate self talk. All of that generate. I like the ed thing. Like that's really
Mhm.
fascinating. There's this internal dialogue you're having with this other person.
Mhm.
It's weird
Yeah.
to say it that way, but so along the lines of in a group setting, yeah, I can see how that would get really sensitive really fast. Um, and with all these mental health issues, like awareness tends to be a really big one because it's like, oh, so if they have that problem, maybe I'm more comfortable talking about mine.
Mhm.
Um, can you talk to me about like in terms of self talk, in terms of the ideas that you had going through your experiences, the thinking of yourself that you had, how trying to fish for the question here. How I'm assuming that got better over time,
Mm,
or maybe that's a bad. So answer that for me. Like, did it get better over time? If it did, like what are the things that helped you see yourself in a better light
mhm.
and not like all those harmful things that you can't imagine someone actually saying that to you, but then that someone wrote it on the board as though they're talking to themselves.
Mhm.
Like that's really damaging, right? So
Yeah.
like when does that improve? How does that improve? Like that seems to be like a target
Mhm.
problem that okay, we need to fix this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So talk to me about that.
Um. Well, a lot of those comments that you make are usually at when you're like at your worst. At your worst. It's really a roller coaster. So some days you can be doing great, and the next day you can be making comments like that. But throughout recovery, it really does take time to not think of yourself that way and to not see it. Um, I mean, I would say, I mean, I can't say that, like, oh yeah, it gets better. I mean, I'm sure it does, but I don't think I'm not that far into recovery to where I can say it gets better yet. So, I mean, I think it gets better, but for me, it hasn't. So, but it's gotten a little better, but it's definitely a battle to like not think of yourself that way.
So is it? I wonder if it's something where like if if the behavior is getting better, but internally you're not giving yourself enough credit, perhaps. Like say,
Mhm.
saying it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because that seems to be a lot of that seems to be the nature of a lot of these mental health issues is that we're not telling ourselves the truth. Like
Mhm.
we're actually doing a lot better than we're
Mhm.
giving ourselves credit for.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that's really interesting to me. Um, I'm gonna think about that for a little bit. Classmates, you got anything for Hope? Any feedback, questions, comments?
So do you think is like a good way to like start conversations about it without becoming, you know what I mean, like the competition thing where it's like I only ate 200 calories
Yeah.
today, like I gotta
Mhm.
get my numbers down.
Yeah.
Like how do you think you would go about starting those conversations without creating that sort of competitive because you sort of so competitive?
Mhm. Yeah. Um. I'm. I mean, for me, it's just better not to talk about it, especially if you're in a food setting. Like you said, eating disorders are very competitive, and like if you see your friend eating a bowl of rice, but you're having this whole meal, it's um, a lot very damaging. So I think if you're in like if you know you're gonna get triggered, I would say just I don't want to say isolate yourself, but just pick and choose your battles. Like don't go to dinner if you know your friends are gonna be like, yeah, I only ate like 200 calories today, because that's not gonna help at all. It's gonna probably make you go the other way in recovery.
How do you differentiate between eating disorders and disordered eating?
Disordered eating. So this was like the last thing I researched, but I didn't go that far into it. So, like I said, disordered eating is it's like basically all the same things as an eating disorder, but you don't you don't really quite meet the BMI requirement, and it's not as long. So, like eating disorders can last for years, but disordered eating, like I said, is like wanting to fit in a prom dress or look good in your bathing suit this summer. It's short term rather than long term battle.
Do you think that um part of like a factor that plays into it is advertising and foods especially with the third kind like the binge eating? Do you think that advertisers take advantage of that sometimes um market themselves towards those type of people?
Yeah, I actually really didn't come across anything like that. But I'm sure companies know that people struggle with stuff like that, so they probably do advertise so more people will buy their product because they know they're hungry.
Oh, well, actually, yeah, eating disorders are kind of like a reaction to obesity and different things that those things they go together as obesity epidemic increases, eating disorders also increase as not I don't know the best word to say, but a polar opposite.
Hmm.
Like when you see people who are obese and I never want to be like that, and they that's part of how they develop the eating disorder and that
Yeah. For me, I'm not really sure about like I didn't really see anything. I mean, I did see some things that said like obesity increases eating disorders, like they do kind of go hand in hand. But like some things that I used to watch to like increase like my motivation to starve was to watch like 1,000 Pound Sisters or something because it is like helping you to be like I never want to be like that, so I should starve. So, I mean, I think there is some correlation between the two.
It's interesting that came up in last hour. It was a completely different topic, completely different issue, but one of the factors or one of the themes that call it a theme that keeps popping up is we have this problem that some people have, and it's a problem that we need to be aware of that people around you might have. But thankfully, those percentages. It's not like 75% of our population is having this problem, right? But it is interesting that like a lot of the marketing and a lot of the entertainment, a lot of the things that happen kind of make light of issues.
Mm-hmm.
Like these shows that you mentioned, like all the TLC's crazy, man. Like they all these people that are just unhealthy, to the point where we're just kind of watching it like the train wreck effect, right? Like we're just, man, I can't believe these people are so bad off. And I wonder how much of that, these networks, they know that people are going to watch that, so they make these shows knowing that people are going to watch that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder how much of that feeds into problems that we're not aware of, such that someone that may not have that problem, because because we're watching these shows, because we're watching the YouTube videos or whatever, and all these people are getting all these views. I wonder if we're not making a problem that we don't have worse.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Um, this is just talking. I'm just saying like be careful. I guess is what I would say is like that we've already had the conversation where your attention is the most valuable commodity in our culture right now. That's why people are able to make a living on social media. That's wild that people can make a living. Why? Because they can get your attention and they'll get paid for your attention. So every like and every view, somebody's getting paid. That's why you don't have to pay for YouTube. You don't have to pay for your social media accounts. They're making bank because people pay to get your attention. Your attention is what's being bought and sold. So be very careful because yeah, you watch the video and you may not even like it. But you watching it incentivizes more of that stuff getting made. So when you're watching terrible things, you're incentivizing people to make more terrible things. Is this making sense? Things that could perpetuate the problems that we're discussing, problems that you may never have, and yet you're incentivized. It's the second time today that's come up. It's only second period. So, guys, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, so is it, I know you talked about all these quotes and stuff, but what about bringing it up to someone that you think might have one? Like, is that bad? I don't know if you answered that or not. You probably did, but is that a bad thing to do, or is that good?
It depends on how you go about it. Some people can respond nicely about it, and some people can become really defensive. Um, if you go about it and like if you say like just making sure like you're okay or something, um, I think it'd go over well. But most of the time, people aren't gonna tell you. Like like if someone had come up to me and said something, I probably would have been like, "You're crazy." Like I'm not telling you. So
Even friends, like
even friends, yeah, I most even if you did go about it and say check on them, you're probably not gonna know. But just for them to know that you care and that you're gonna check in on them helps a lot.
And to that point, like I knew Panagakis was a legend already, but like I envy the fact that you have teachers like when I hear you feel safe to talk to your teachers, thing in my mind immediately was, man, I hope I'm that kind of teacher. You know what I mean? So, guy, like translating your question is like, man, I hope I'm that kind of friend. Like, I think that's something good to strive for. You know what I mean? I want to be the kind of friend that if I if I do need to bring this up, I hope my friends feel safe enough to talk to me about it. Does that make sense? Or
Earlier you said, I think you said it was like genetics, right? Genetics. So can you like be born with one and it like doesn't develop later in life, or are you just like more likely to have one?
I can't remember when I got diagnosed with one. She said something, but I don't remember the word. But it's like, yeah, it's like when you have a gene for cancer and it doesn't show up until later. It's like that. Like it's sitting there for all your life. Like for me, I've always had one, but it didn't show up until 8th grade. So yeah, I mean you can be born with one, but it doesn't show up until something drastic happens.
anything else? I hope is having a great time being up in front of everybody. But, good. All right. Let's give her one more.